political woke rubbish. Jade said it's selfish. If people want to live, let them live a little. Absolutely. I think it's so unfair for those of us that are quite happy to drink and look after ourselves. It's a bit like when they sort of change, the artificial sugar instead of actual sugar. It's not my fault if people can't help themselves with sugar. Seriously. But keep your thoughts coming. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you believe that Labour will crack down on trade unions? Now, Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting declared that Labour would take on hostile health unions in a bid to save the NHS as it requires drastic reform. Streeting singled out the British Medical Association, or the BMA, for its apparent hostility towards the idea that patients should expect better standards. Now, figures show that the NHS hit a record 7.2 million people on the waiting list, which is set to worsen. Around about 15,000 operations were expected to be cancelled next week due to the nurses' strike over demands for a pay rise of 19%, which is somewhat unrealistic. Now, Labour's approach towards unions suggests that Sir Keir Starmer's party is adopting a new approach, indicating a separation from the party and its traditional roots. Now, this is despite the fact that the Labour Party accept more than £15 million from unions since Sir Keir Starmer's been the leader. So for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, do you actually believe that the Labour Party will crack down on these trade unions? I'm joined now by former Sun editor Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, thank you so much and welcome to the programme. Kelvin, firstly, do you actually believe that they are telling the truth, or do you think it's just a land grab and a trick to tell us that they really are going to do what we want them to do?
Well, I think you have to define what is a health union. He's attacking the BMA effectively for voting the other day, that between 9 and 5 they were going to work and they weren't going to work any other times, which is a catastrophe for anybody who's ever tried actually to try and get a GP under any circumstances. So that's a particularly narrow attack. I'd be actually more impressed with him if he'd attacked either Unison or the GMB, people who represent ambulance drivers who are prepared to let your mother lie on a bathroom floor gasping for breath in return for pay, or Unison or any of the majors. So he's been very narrow, and he would get support, I suspect. And this is where the Conservative Party are actually slightly at risk, because the truth about the matter is, I don't hear anybody at the top end of the Conservative Party who run our country actually saying things which will appeal to basic Conservative voters. They should say to the doctors, you're either going to start working 7 days a week, you're either going to start working 12 hours a day, or please don't become members of the NHS. And I think that is where both sides of the argument are going to end up. We are going to end up with doctors not working for the NHS because they can do better in private. And actually, if I could access and not pay taxes, but could use my cash to get to my doctor when I wanted to, I would personally prefer that. And the people who don't want this are people who don't pay taxes. Well, that's fine. They can stay with the NHS. So that's where this argument's going. Wes Streeting is just being cunning. He is just simply making his argument very narrowly towards the doctors and the GPs. We need a wider debate on, is there any future for the NHS? Because right now, if the nurses and the ambulance drivers are prepared to sentence your mum and dad to death in return for a pay rise, what is the point of an NHS which was set up, 75, 77 years ago, and the moment may have passed? Everything appears to be free, but actually it's all being paid out of taxes, and only 50% of the country pays tax. So 50% are having a free NHS service. And what do you get for nothing? You get the NHS service we've got today, which is not working for 100% of the people, not alone the 50% who are paying for it.
It's interesting you say that as well. And I'm sure a large portion of that 50% probably also have private medical cover. I want to bring in author and journalist Rebecca Reid, and also, who else have I got? National Secretary Lorcan Whitehead. Let's bring them both in. Rebecca, I want to start with you then. What did you think of what Calvin's saying? Because he's pointed out that pretty much, 50% of the people are paying for this thing. A large portion aren't paying for it, and doesn't appear to be fit for purpose at the moment.
Well, I'm only just talking to Kelvin because of his comments about the football commentary, but suspending that temporarily, even though I do think you are bang out of order, Kelvin, I understand, and actually a friend of mine from my NCT group couldn't get an ambulance for her daughter over the weekend, and I understand that in that scenario it's one of the most frightening, awful things that can happen to you. And we do take for granted that somebody will come to your door quickly if you need them. But it's difficult because, we talk about nurses and doctors as heroes and angels, but at the end of the day, it's a career choice. It's their job. It's what they get paid for.
Yeah.
And anybody individually has a right to want to be paid more, paid fairly, paid enough to be able to have a decent standard of life. And it's a highly skilled job. So I don't think it's unreasonable. Surprising they want more money. I fear that the time may be coming that, yes, we do have to assess how a National Health Service functions and whether, in my opinion, people who earn more need to pay more into it. And I think it's incumbent on you, if you can afford private health insurance, to get it, but to keep paying the same tax as well, in the same way that people who send their children to private schools continue to pay taxes that go towards education, but they don't personally partake of that system.
And do you think that the Labour Party are being genuine? Because Wes Streeting is saying that he's going to clamp down on more hostile trade unions. Do you trust that they're meaning that, or do you think they're trying to sort of land grab a lot of the Conservative votes?
I think it's difficult to ever believe what any politician says. And over the course of my life, I don't remember anybody making a promise and then doing it. Literally, I can barely remember that happening ever. But I am a believer in Keir Starmer in the sense that I much prefer him to Jeremy Corbyn. I think he's he's clearly very intelligent, whatever else you think. So I think we don't really have a choice but to trust him. I think Labour have always got the same very difficult problem, which is that they're a party of two very different groups of people. Left-wing Islington types like me, and then also left-wing, usually outside of London, traditionally working-class people. And those two groups want slightly different things, and they want different language. I want everyone to be cuddled and stroked and told that everything's going to be okay. My friends and family in the north who have working-class backgrounds want harder line, more direct conversation. So I think it's a very difficult line for him to walk, and I don't envy Keir Starmer trying to appease both those groups of people and the unions who have a lot of power and a lot of money. That's why David Miliband didn't get to be leader of the Labour Party previously, because the unions didn't like him.
Lorcan, what's your view on that? What do you think? Do you think the Labour Party are being genuine?
Well, I think that I think that Wes Streeting's comments are particularly misguided. I think we've got people suffering all across this country. And, workers in our NHS, nurses, we've got posties, we've got teachers, we've got all sorts of people wanting to take action to, get better pay, defend their pay in a Tory cost of living crisis. And I don't think that Wes Streeting should be, going into the press and attacking working people for wanting to do that. I think he should be supporting them in doing that.
So you're kind of in support of him. Are you in support of him? Then you're not in support of him with his stance on these trade unions. Then. No, I wouldn't be supportive. I think he's. Some of the comments in the press today from Wes Streeting have been about the need to take a hard line, and he's not afraid to stand up against vested interests. But we're talking about people on the front line of our public services, delivering essential services, which we all rely on. Who are being hit really hard, like everybody in this country at the moment, by this cost of living crisis, like many of your viewers will be, I'm sure. And so, I don't think it's the right line to be saying that he's going to take a tough line and crack down on them and their vested interests. I think they're ordinary people who are standing up for a decent day's pay. And the Labour Party, which was, let's not forget, founded to represent the interests of working people in Parliament, should be doing what it was founded to do and standing by those people and supporting them and helping them to get the defend their pay and get the gains that they need. Calvin.
Well, particularly, I find that reaction a bit strange because actually the BMA, our GPs who are working so hard, have just said that they want to. They voted to reduce their working hours to between 9 and 5. Well, people, and that'll be 5 days a week. Well, people go to work. There are working people who need to be treated, and they can't guarantee that they're going to be all between 9 and 5. So I find that a difficult argument. I also find it impossible to say that when you join the NHS or you're a nurse or an ambulance driver, that you can genuinely say, and by the way, a junior doctor, because they'll be the next lot coming down the pipe, that you can genuinely say, I tell you what I'm going to do, I am going to walk off the job and you lot can just go and die. I find that impossible to justify whether I'm right, left or centre. I have yet to hear an argument and this is the first time I've ever heard an argument where you say, well, working people are entitled to do whatever they like. I do not believe they're entitled to, in the same way as the army can't walk off the job and the police can't walk off the job. Nobody in the NHS could be allowed to simply walk off the job. And what I dislike intensely about the Conservative Party is not that they're not that they don't have some good ideas. They're not tough enough on saying this, and just simply say, if Unison, GMB, anybody who does that, we will seize your assets. You are not to kill innocent people. It doesn't seem a big thing to ask, to simply say when you sign your contract of employment, I will not kill innocent people. What's wrong with that?
Can I get Rebecca to comment quickly then?
Because I want to understand what the logical extension of that is. If you said that we are no longer going to pay doctors and nurses, would you accept that it would then be fair for them to say, well, fine, we won't work?
Well, the issue is they don't have to do it. They don't have to work in the NHS. They don't have to work anywhere. But I am saying if you sign a contract, you have to undertake, you will not kill people. What is your argument to the nurses and the doctors? What about the ambulance drivers? The ambulance driver doesn't turn up to your mother. Your mother dies from a stroke that she wouldn't have died. How would you feel about that argument?
Well, listen, I'll get the final comment to you, Lorcan. Can I get Lorcan to comment? Final comment to you, Lorcan.
I think Kelvin's, he's living in cloud cuckoo land, to be honest. The reason that we've got people taking action in our NHS and, particularly, our nurses and other workers in our NHS is because of the falling standards after over a decade of underfunding from this Tory government, which has driven down standards. This is the reason why we've got people waiting like we've been hearing for so long for ambulances. This is driving down safety standards. I know people who work in the NHS, and I know people who organise people who work in the NHS, and it has been very, very hard to get them to vote for strike action because they have such a duty to their patients, and they feel that duty. But the reason a lot of them have now decided to do it is because safety standards have been driven down so far, and so they know that they need to take some action and stop the rot which is going on in our NHS at the moment.
Well, listen, I'm going to have to leave it there, but I've got to say thank you very much for your contributions. Former Sun editor Kelvin Mackenzie, National Security Secretary of Momentum, Lorcan Whitehead, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Thank you so much. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. On the way, the Great British Debate. I'm asking, do you believe that Labour will crack down on trade unions? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Then at 5 o'clock, stay with me in this week's Outside. My celebrity guest is a former football manager, professional player. He most notably played for Bolton Wanderers in the 70s. He's managed 6 Premier League teams, including Everton. Here's another clue. He was England's football manager for 67 days. So he has. Has that helped you at all? All that on the way. First, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. Jersey authorities say the recovery operation following yesterday's explosion will take weeks, not days. At least 3 people were killed when a blast ripped through a block of flats in St Helier. No survivors have been found. 12 people are still thought to be missing. The Chief of Jersey Police, Robin Smith, says sadly more fatalities are expected. Authorities in Scotland say the man accused of making the bomb that caused the Lockerbie disaster is now in US custody. 270 people were killed when a device was detonated on Pan Am Flight 103 in December 1988. The Justice Department says Libyan Abu Aghila Massoud, who's believed to be the 3rd conspirator of the terrorist attack, will make an initial appearance in a federal court in Washington. The Nurses' Union has offered to press pause on strike action if the government agrees to hold talks on pay. The Royal College of Nursing has accused the Health Secretary of failing to negotiate properly, and thousands of members are now planning to walk out on the 15th and the 20th of December. Writing in The Sun, Steve Barclay warned the action will cause significant risk to patients and added the door remains open for further talks. The cold snap, which has been causing travel disruption, is expected to continue through the week. As snow and ice sweeps across parts of the UK, the Met Office says overnight frost is expected until at least next Friday. A yellow warning for snow and ice is in place for parts of Scotland, as well as southwestern England. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. Don't forget, you can also download the GB News app where you can check out all the programmes that we have here on the channel. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 19 minutes to 5 o'clock. Now it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, do you believe that the Labour Party will actually crack down on trade unions? Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting has declared Labour would take on hostile health unions in a bid to save the NHS, as it requires drastic reform. Now, this comes as the figures show that the NHS hit a new record of 7.2 million people on the waiting list. I mean, that's unbelievable. Now, this is also set to worsen. Up to 100,000 nurses are scheduled to take industrial action. The first national strike over wage increases. Now, Labour's new approach towards unions suggests that the party is aligning themselves further towards the centre ground in a bid to distance themselves from the current strike chaos. And all of this despite the Labour Party receiving more than £15 million from unions since Sir Keir Starmer became the leader. So do you trust them? For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, do you believe that the Labour Party will actually crack down on those trade unions? Let me see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, so Christine, they are talking about Wes Streeting. Sounds like he's talking tough, but as Kelvin pointed out, it's not all the unions. He's talking about hostile unions, so we have to look at the language here.
They can't afford, as you pointed out, they can't afford to crack down on the unions that hard because they rely on them. Not only do they rely on them for their money, but the unions control a third of the votes on Labour's NEC. So they are umbilically connected to the unions. What I find extraordinary about Wes Streeting's comments, and I wrote them down, he said things which were music to my ears, and they could easily have come from Margaret Thatcher. He said, the NHS, it is a service, not a shrine. Well done. It must reform or die. Well done. More staff with more staff must come better standards. He's saying all the right things, but will he follow through? Who knows? I can't see the Labour Party being in any position to crack down sufficiently hard on the unions. You can understand why we've basically got a general strike on our hands. We're going to have that in the next few weeks. It's going to be like that with everybody out on strike. You can understand why inflation's going through the roof and people's wages haven't kept up. You can see why it's happening. But we have, if we don't nip it in the bud, it will just become an inflationary spiral, never-ending spiral. And I don't have any confidence that Labour can do that. Not whether they will or not. They can't. They can't afford to.
Wes Streeting is tapping into the gritty reality that hard left socialism is never going to win a government in the United Kingdom. Now, the reason for Tony Blair's success was that he tried to find a happy medium between socialism and capitalism. And Wes Streeting understands that. If Keir Starmer is going to be our next Prime Minister, you need to actually have a balance between the two forms of politics. There's a distinction to be drawn as well, because Mr Mackenzie, Kelvin's right. I cannot still fathom that there are people who have taken Hippocratic oaths, doctors, and the oath basically says, you do everything for that patient. OK, that's your priority. And there are people who are driving people to hospital who are prepared to stand at a picket line in the snow and ice of a December evening and morning and afternoon and allow people's calls to go unanswered. It's a scandal. It's an absolute disgrace. Now, the train strike is completely different.
Why?
People aren't going to lose their lives.
Well, they might do.
They're going to lose
they might do.
How are they going to lose their life if they can't get on a train?
Livelihoods. A lot of small businesses will fold if the trains fold.
I understand. Well, I doubt it because they have selected dates, but no one's going to lose their life.
Well, they might do. No. I don't think you can say that. There could be medical supplies. There could be something that needs to be transported by train. I think there's a very broad brush to say that it's not going to affect people's lives. Yes, people will potentially die as a result of these particular strikes. Any strike, even postal strikes. Somebody could maybe not receive something they should have received, maybe a scan or something, I don't know, that tells them to do something. And, there is a risk to people.
Yeah, I know, but Danny's right, that the main risk to life is the NHS strike. I mean, my father was a GP. He simply could not begin to understand what's in the heads of these NHS people who are prepared to strike. He would work 24/7, 365 days of the year.
But that's the point.
That's what doctors and medical staff are supposed to do.
But that's what it appears.
They sign up to.
Yeah, but that is what's being taken advantage of. That is their belief. That's what they're saying. Obviously, somebody who's in a caring profession, you would think, would not want to go on strike and affect the lives of those who they're supposed to be caring for. But ultimately, if inflation is running away with itself and your wage seems to be falling almost, by the day, and you can't afford to live, then what do you do? You're kind of caught by,
but the nurses,
curlies, aren't you?
The nurses would argue that is being used as leverage.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we've heard over recent weeks and months
you're agreeing with me.
that it's a vocation, and that's being used against them. And I feel sorry for them because they say, how dare you strike? Well, it's a vocation. Why do you get into this business? Because I want to save lives. So you're contradicting yourself. How dare you strike? And that is used to undermine them.
But the other side of it is, if you look at it, OK, so you want more money, you get more money, OK, fine. But it's with inflation, OK, with inflation. Inflation carries on rising. You're now in a higher tax bracket. So now you're going to pay more of your income towards the tax to pay for your own wage. I feel that nobody's really thinking this whole thing through. Because ultimately it's the taxpayers that are going to pay that, and they are taxpayers.
Of course, and everybody's going to be leapfrogging everybody else. So we'll have the train drivers leaping up here, and then the nurses will come back, and then the Royal Mail, and it goes on and on and on. There is no end to it, except a really hard crackdown by the government. And I am astonished that the government has not yet negotiated with the NHS unions. I mean, it's...
because they're asking for a 19% pay rise.
It's unrealistic, sit down and negotiate. There's no point the two sides just standing there, both of them digging their feet in. They have to get together around a table.
And also, what happens next year or the year after when inflation comes down to 3 or 4%? Maybe it should be index-linked. to inflation.
Well, you know what? That could be a negotiation. An index linked to inflation. It will force the government to then bring inflation down super fast. I think perhaps there should be a condition with these sort of public sector jobs where lives are at stake, that there should be a guarantee that it should go up gradually with inflation anyway. If it had been doing that, there would not be this huge jump. I think there should be that, but that in return for not having the ability to strike.
I just think it's morally bankrupt to be a paramedic and refuse to go to someone who's had a heart attack. How they can sleep with themselves.
I couldn't agree with. And look, and here's
sleep
the army.
At night, not sleep with themselves.
Sleep with themselves. Who do you sleep with? Do you not sleep with yourself?
That's a single ambulance driver. He's got no missus.
And for the third time, the army are being called in and told to give up their Christmas. I mean, I don't know how many troops it is, but a huge number have been told to cancel their Christmas plans because the border force.
Well, yeah, you border force. I don't know why they're doing that.
Their goodwill is being stretched to the limit. Where's the goodwill that should be shown by the medical?
It doesn't make sense. I think if people honestly think this through to its natural conclusion, they'll realise that everybody loses. Nobody's going to win this. You can keep making your pay go up like that, but at the end of the day, you're going to be pushed into a higher tax bracket. You're going to be paying more tax to pay for your own pay rise. It's a nonsense, but people want more money, and I can see why.
The morning after the first paramedic pay strike, the papers will all be trying to find case studies where people have lost their lives. And that's when public support will just disintegrate.
I think public support is already disintegrating.
We need to get more money into the health service, more, not just piling in government money. We need to get more private money in there. I think it was, I can't remember who it was it Rebecca, who said that the people who pay for private medicine should be encouraged. I don't think she went as far as saying they should get a tax relief. But if you're prepared to pay, whether it's for education or health, if you're prepared to pay twice, what is wrong with that? You're not taking somebody's place. You're actually taking yourself out of the queue.
Oh, let me see what the viewers think, because this show's nothing without them. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go? Should we go to Anna McGovern? She's there. Where is she? Where's Anna? Should we go to Speak? Where is she? In Reading. To Reading, to speak. To speak in Reading. No, to speak to Anna in Reading. I'm joking. Somebody's written this thing. I don't know. It's nothing to do with me. Heads will roll. Anna, what do you think? What's your view on this?
Thank you. I agree with many of the sentiments I just heard now on the panel. And I, for one, do not buy for 1 second that Labour is ready or anyway willing to crack down on the unions. I think Keir Starmer, he's trying to position the Labour Party as kind of a second revival of Blairism governance, simply to win a general election. Because as we've seen before, the Labour Party, they act divisive and they publicly say those key major one-line talking points, which ultimately hold no substance, but will make those front headlines and will secure favourable public support. So it was only several weeks ago that Keir Starmer was actually defending the unions and the right to strike, and that Labour would even tear up any laws passed by the government which undermines the right to strike if Labour were to win the next general election. And to me, it's so ironic that with Streeting, he would declare Labour's readiness to crack down on unions overall, and then Angela Rayner would be ready to join the picket lines in terms of the health unions. So I think it ultimately proves that Labour has little to no substance in any stance that they declare, because they'll say anything to get into number 10 and then backtrack on it regardless. So I don't think that they're a party to be trusted.
Well, thank you very much, Anna, for that. Yes, I'm thinking of the words that Wes Streeting used there, which he said hostile unions, so it's not really all of them. Anna, thank you so much. Lovely to speak to you. That's Anna McGovern. She's our great British voice here on GB News. Let's see what you've been saying. Michael says, do the unions really believe the government will accept inflation-busting pay rise demands? No chance. Labour are overwhelmingly funded by unions. They need them on their side. Shannon says that trade unions are the key for protection of workers' rights in this country. There should be no crackdown of any sort. Maria says the government needs to crack down on the unions, never mind Labour. They've promised action for months and they have done nothing yet. Good point. If you just joined me, welcome. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, World View. American basketball player Brittany Griner, who was jailed in Russia, has been set free. A prisoner exchange took place between Moscow and the US, with America swapping Russia's merchant of death for the sports star. All of that on the way after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online, this is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's now time for World View. An American basketball player, Brittany Griner, was jailed in Russia for flying with a cannabis vape. It's finally free after a prisoner exchange took place between Moscow and America. Joining me to talk about this is our political commentator and Russia expert, Danny Armstrong. Danny, thank you very much for joining me. What can you tell us about this prisoner exchange? I mean, it was this guy who was, a dealer, an arms dealer or something, or a dealer of death?
Well, yeah, of course, the big story between Russia and the US is this kind of game of swapsies in the terms of a prisoner exchange. Brittany Griner, the basketball star, has been swapped for the merchant of death, Victor Bout, a huge arms dealer and somebody who funneled a lot of arms through various companies that he had before he was imprisoned in the US. Now, it might seem strange why the merchant of death has been swapped for a basketball star, an athlete. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, you see that it's just nothing more than a PR play by both sides. So we have Brittany Griner, who was sentenced to 9 years in a Russian penal colony for traveling with a CBD oil vape. Now, of course, that doesn't really match up to Victor Bout's charges of arms dealing.
Not really, no, not at all. But
now,
anyway, so she's back.
Brittany Griner is...
So she's back in America now, so she's fine. I want to move on to Russia, though, because I want to find out about the war with Ukraine. What's the current state of that at the moment?
Well, there's huge fighting going on in Bakhmut at the minute, which is in northern Donetsk. There's been reports of huge shelling, people were doing without electricity, people doing without power. Of course, as winter sets in, this is going to be hugely affecting millions and millions of people across Ukraine. I've heard on the ground reports of electricity coming back, but only in sort of a couple of hours a day. This is going to be huge going into winter. Of course, Bakhmut in northern Donetsk is a huge territorially very important to the Ukraine and to Russia as well. But it looks like the fighting and the shelling is going to be carrying on for quite a while and right the way through winter. But it certainly looks like this fighting between Russia's mercenaries, the Wagner Group, and Ukrainian forces is going to rumble on.
Thank you very much, Danny. That's Danny Armstrong. He's a political commentator. Let's travel over to the States now, where we're going to have a chat with the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Duttridge. Paul, thank you very much for joining me. What can you tell us about the poll on Biden and Trump? Because I hear that they want neither.
Take it with a pinch of salt, that poll, OK? Because when you drill down into the figures, you find that it's 37% of Republicans don't want Trump to run again, which means he's got 63% amongst the Republican Party, and that's the only game. Nobody was going to vote for Trump. Nobody who isn't a devout Trump voter is going to vote for Trump. So he's got 63% support as it stands after the midterms. It's Biden who's got 57% of Democrats don't want him to run next time. So that poll was amongst all voters, 801 people in a poll. It was amongst all voters. And when you've got the entire media and the entire state apparatus working against you, I'm amazed that he's getting 63% support still. So even the New York Times wrote a couple of days ago, the New York Times hates him, hates Trump. Even they said, don't write him off. Look what happened in Italy.
Exactly.
You can never write off Trump. He is not a politician. He is the leader of a populist movement.
He is indeed. Now, I want to ask you about Harry and Meghan, the documentary. Did you watch it? And what's been what is the reaction in America to it? Because here in the UK, it's been but what about in America?
Surprisingly, more of that than you'd imagine.
Really?
The way I see it is that this show, it was made for America. This is the interesting thing, I think, just watching it as a Brit in America. It was made, that whole curtsy thing. Look at her reffing, the medieval knights, whatever, the kind of medieval times dinners. That's what she reffed when she said that. Americans will know about this. This was a show designed to work in America, and it's amazing. I'll tell you the thing that Americans are picking up on is that fake curtsy, that exaggerated curtsy that she did, and the look on Harry's face. I swear. If they think they're getting more popular, they are really diminishing any kind of credibility that they might have had. Look at all the A-listers that are astutely staying away from commenting. You've had the Obamas haven't commented on it. You've had the Clooneys. All these people did comment in the past. This is the point. They used to comment on Meghan, that she was a victim, etc. Even the quote of the week for me is Oprah Winfrey saying that when she was asked to comment on the show, she said, "I don't interfere in family matters." It's not for 40 years. That's not what you do. It's amazing. Well, so they cannot, the A-listers that they are trying to court, see them as people that are prepared to leak secrets, and A-listers guard their privacy jealously. And it is, this is the beginning of the end. Where else can they go from this?
Well, we'll find out, because we'll be back to find out how they respond to this, the next three. Paul Duttridge, always a pleasure. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. Good afternoon, it's just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines on the way as an amazing football manager in Outside. You have to guess who he is. Also, I'll be asking you, are heat pumps and solar panels the alternatives? Are they the way forward? All of that after your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. We start with some breaking news. A number of people are believed to be in a critical condition after being pulled from a lake in Solihull. West Midlands police say they're at the scene of a serious incident at Babs Mill Park in Kingshurst. It's not yet clear how those involved ended up in the water in freezing conditions. We'll have more on this developing story later. Jersey authorities say the recovery operation following yesterday's explosion will take weeks, not days. At least 3 people were killed when a blast ripped through a block of flats in St Helier. No survivors have been found. 12 people are still thought to be missing. The Chief of Jersey Police, Robin Smith, says sadly more fatalities are expected.
We are not going to be here for days. We are likely to be here for weeks. And it's important that I make that clear. This morning I spoke to the Family Liaison Coordinator who described to me the feelings of those families, and I am really, really keen to ensure that everybody properly understands the emotions that they are currently going through. So this is not going to happen quickly, it's going to happen carefully, and it's going to happen sensitively.
The man accused of making the bomb that caused the Lockerbie disaster is now in US custody. 270 people were killed when a device was detonated on Pan Am Flight 103 in December 1988. The Justice Department says Libyan Abu Aghila Massoud, who's believed to be the 3rd conspirator of the terrorist attack, will make an initial appearance in a federal court in Washington. The Nurses' Union has offered to press pause on strike action if the government agrees to hold talks on pay. The Royal College of Nursing has accused the Health Secretary of failing to negotiate properly, and thousands of members are now planning to walk out on the 15th and the 20th of December. But writing in The Sun, Steve Barclay warned the action will cause significant risk to patients and added the door remains open for further talks, but he didn't say whether pay would be part of that discussion. Meanwhile, postal workers are staging fresh strikes today. The Communication Workers Union says the action could risk a Christmas meltdown. More strikes are planned over the next couple of weeks, which the unions warned will create a huge backlog of post. Royal Mail says the money allocated to the pay deal could be eaten away by the costs of further action. The cold snap, which has been causing travel disruption, is expected to continue through the week. Snow and ice has hit large swathes of the UK, and the Met Office says overnight frost is expected until at least next Friday. A yellow alert for snow and ice is still in place for Scotland, as well as southwestern England, and an ice and fog warning has now come into effect in Northern Ireland. Well, in a world first, a teenager from Leicester is now cancer-free after taking part in an experimental new treatment. 13-year-old Alyssa, who had leukemia, was given pre-manufactured cells from a healthy donor, which were then modified to kill cancerous T cells. 28 days after being given the treatment, she's now in remission. Doctors at Great Ormond Street Hospital hope it can be offered to children early in their treatment, ultimately giving them the chance of a better future. Ukraine says more than 1.5 million people in the southwestern Odessa region are without power following Russian airstrikes. Officials in Kyiv say electricity in the city will be restored over the coming days, but they're warning complete restoration could take 2 or 3 more months. Moscow defended the strikes, describing them as militarily legitimate. President Volodymyr Zelensky says the situation in the region is difficult.
In total, Russian terrorists used 15 drones against the Odessa region, just during one night on Saturday. This is the true attitude of Russia towards Odessa, the attitude towards Odessa residents. Deliberate bullying, deliberate attempt to bring disaster to the city.
Harry Kane says he takes responsibility for England's loss in the World Cup quarter-finals. The captain says he's gutted and it'll take some time to get over losing to France last night. Meanwhile, Gareth Southgate says he needs time to decide whether he has enough energy to continue as the England manager. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. This is coming up to 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Still to come each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. My celebrity guest is a football manager, a former professional player. He's most notably played for Bolton Wanderers in the 70s and he's managed 6 Premier League teams, including Everton. He was England's football manager for 67 days and he was dubbed the Big Sam. Has anyone guessed it? Well, keep guessing. Then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are heat pumps and solar panels viable alternatives? The Met Office has issued weather warnings as temperatures in the UK could drop as low as 12 degrees. And with the country facing extreme weather conditions this year, people are struggling to afford to heat their homes this winter during the cost of living crisis. But can heat pumps and solar panels realistically serve as a viable alternative? Email me your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. So now it's time for this week's Outside Footballing legend, Sam Allardyce. He's our celebrity guest, starting off as a former footballer. Sam made 578 league and cup appearances across 21 years, mostly spending his time in the Football League with brief spells in the North American Soccer League and the League of Ireland. However, Big Sam is known for his managerial roles, taking up his positions at Bolton, Newcastle, Blackburn, West Ham and, of course, Sunderland. I remember Sunderland, I went to university there. Sam landed the England job but then he left just after one match, after he was caught during an undercover sting where he was filmed suggesting reporters on how to get around FIFA's third-party ownership rules. And since then, he's managed West Brom and Everton, but now he has new plans. Sam is known for being a man who always has something to say, and I'm glad to say he joins me now. Sam, welcome to the show. Sam, man with a plan. Good to talk to you. Right, so we've got to go straight there.
To be here.
Lovely to meet you, Sam. We've got to go straight in there. The match last night, what did you make of it?
Well, obviously, we're all very disappointed because when you have lost a game of football, we all agree, I think, I don't need to be an expert to say that we didn't deserve to lose it, but we have to look at the key moments in the game, of course, and the 2 key moments for me particularly are the second goal that England let in, which could have been avoidable, and of course the penalty that unfortunately the captain of England had missed at Sir Harry Kane, like you mean. So he was very nervous. I think that you can see him puffing and blowing his cheeks under the extreme pressure that the World Cup brings and what penalties brings to the game in the World Cup in the knockout stages. And unfortunately, we were all sat there very comfortably thinking that Harry will score because he rarely misses a penalty, and right at the very wrong time for England and him. It was a miss, and a big miss, unfortunately. Ballooned over the bar, didn't even make the keeper make a save, sadly.
I know, it's a real bummer, isn't it, when it goes like that? And the thing is, he's got to deal with all that pressure. I would definitely, I think I'd crack under that. I don't think I'd be able to do that. So for you, it's tough, isn't it? Really, really, so you shouldn't think too badly. They did quite well. They squandered a load of chances, I've got to say. To be fair, I didn't think they would win, but that's just me. But you've been managing football clubs for a while. What made you get into that?
A childhood dream from 9 years old to play football. I think that when I started 9 years at school and worked all the way through the school to finally become an apprentice at Bolton Wanderers at 15, then I dream of getting in Bolton Wanderers' first team. That was achieved in, I think it was 73. From 73, I had a great career in football in all 4 divisions. A very, very, very great spell in American football in the soccer league out there. And finally decided that it was time for me to move into management. And I think that having had a number of managers and a number of clubs over the years in all the divisions, I felt with my experience it was the right thing to do. Gained my qualifications as best I could and then waited for the jobs to come along. And of course, nothing comes easy in this game. And I started the bottom, worked my way up throughout all the divisions, through all the divisions in football, in the Football League, and finally ended up at the very top, which I'm so pleased about. When I sit here thinking at 15 when I left school, would I still be talking about football at 68? And of course, yes, I am. And only recently, probably I hadn't had a football club for, I think, nearly 2 years now. So, yeah, wonderful time. Really have enjoyed every minute of it. And fantastic career I've had. And I look back on that with great fondness.
You're looking good for 68, really? Is that all?
Thank you very much.
What would you say then? Because a lot of people, you've had a great career. You've done pretty much, your reality, your dream is, your reality is your dream, which is amazing. Not many people get to do that. If you were to look back on it,
yes.
If you were to look back on it though, and I know probably loads of people probably ask you this, but your biggest achievement or the moment in your life where you just thought, wow, I can't believe that this is me. The imposter syndrome suddenly dissipates and you think, crikey, I'm actually, this is me.
Well, yes, I mean, that was getting in the Premier League. I think that with my club that I first joined at Bolton Wanderers at 15, they chose for me to come back and me to manage them into the Premier League. Ultimately, when I got them in the Premier League, that we set out a very good plan, a very good staff, very good playing staff, and found ourselves in the European leagues within 4 years. So that was an outstanding achievement. I think the career took a little dip, unfortunately, by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, with a couple of new owners that came in at Newcastle and Blackburn that unfortunately decided to move me on. But I mean, then the ultimate dream was, which ended up the poison chalice, was be the England job, of course. What person who's in football or manages football doesn't want to have the top job in the country? And I managed to clinch that. So it didn't last as long as it should have lasted. And of course, the sting was a sting, because it was proven after that I didn't break any third-party rules, and that was housed in the House of Commons and across the Telegraph by our pursuit of some justice in the end, which took over 2 years. So, then I moved on and moved on to Palace and moved on to Everton. So that's well behind me now. I wish England all the best. I wish Gareth all the best and the lads, because they are a fantastic team and a fantastic squad.
Well, I was going to say you lasted longer than Liz Truss. Couldn't resist. But you mentioned England, Southgate. Do you think after this, do you think he should be sacked? I mean, a lot of people saying, because when managers don't win, that's what happens.
I think Gareth and the FA have done extremely well. We have to remember that even in our disappointment today, that he's had the best record since Sir Alf Ramsey, of course. So I think that we have a squad that's good enough. It didn't quite achieve all what it wanted to this time. Very close to that, but they get more and more experience as time goes on. So this squad's still got a lot of good football in it, and it's up to Gareth. And I think he decides himself when he reflects on this, not too early, of course, with his disappointment, but reflects on that with the FA. Or I would be highly surprised if the FA turned around and made the decision on their own and went to Gareth and said, we're going to look for a new manager. I think that would be a discussion that they both have, and the outcome will be seen by whoever it is, and whenever this meeting is, and whenever they reflect on the meeting. I mean, they should wait a while to let everything settle down and then look at the situation and then come together and see. Has got a contract till 2014, so I think at the very least he should get the Euros in the next 2 years.
And what about, because this particular World Cup ended up being a bit political, rainbow laces, then there was the knee and all this. I mean, it was just like, for goodness sake, just play the goddamn game. What is your view on a lot of that? So the knee taking, the laces, whatever people want to do to show what they think and what they believe. Do you think it's necessary?
Well, obviously, people, if they feel strongly enough and want to speak up, will speak up. But there's a certain point where you have to put that to bed and put it to one side and concentrate on what the actual fact of the matter is, that it's the world stage and it's the world football stage, and we should focus on the football. So I think the demonstration died down after the early stages, which I'm glad to say. But politics really should stay out of football, personally, from my point of view, and play the beautiful game, you know. So, yes, demonstrations will happen because people may take notice, and they continue to happen, obviously, when the World Cup was finished. So, yes, I'm glad it hasn't spoilt it in the end, because I do think it has been a very good World Cup, and more importantly, I think the entertainment value has been very good from all the teams. And I'd have to say that in Doha, Qatar, they've put on a terrific show with all those stadiums. Perhaps a little on the downside is lots of people have had trouble with tickets, as technology seems to let us down again. Forget these barcodes and get to tickets and get through the turnstiles and get everybody in to watch a game. You know, that's probably been the most disappointing, I would think.
Yeah, but that's where they're coming home, though, now, isn't it? Football's coming home. No, they're coming home. Bless their hearts. They did a good job. It's tough. Now, for you, though, now, you've done all this managing and everything else like that. What is your focus?
My focus is basically still watching a lot of football, doing quite a lot of podcastings on football, of course, been doing it all over the World Cup, of course, and talking to people like yourself regarding the game. And I think that that will obviously continue. I like doing the media stuff. I like being involved in the media, and I think that doing that is a great way to pass the time, keep yourself active. You know, so. You know, if a job comes up, of course, you would always consider that job, of course. But the jobs at the moment are not coming my way. Nobody's ringing up yet. So one just sits back and waits. Apart from I have had a few offers abroad, but abroad at my age is not for me. I don't want to shift the family, pack them up and send them to a European country particularly. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, that would have been great, but not for me now.
No, don't blame me. I'm quite lazy like that as well. I'm not going anywhere. I love this country. It's great. and so your podcast, if people want to check out the podcast, where will they find it? What do they need to look for?
It's on William Hill. It's with William Hill, my podcast. I don't know whether I should advertise that for you. I'm sorry about that if I shouldn't have done. But I've been doing the World Cup with William Hill all the way through. So that's still continuing, even though England have got knocked out till the final. So, and maybe beyond from there, some great guests on. Duncan Ferguson, Sammy Lee, Peter Reid, of course, Robbie Savage, and lots of others on the way. So, yeah, it's been very, very good talking about football.
Well, listen, Sam Allardyce, lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for being my outside guest. Maybe sometime you'll be prepared to travel down to the studio here in London. We'd love to see you in person. Thank you so much.
Yes, but I could do without the text the day before, OK? So tell your bosses so you can do that. Give us a bit more time, will you? Especially with the train strike as well, by the way.
Definitely, we'll do that. Sam Allardyce, thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. That was Sam Allardyce. He's a former football manager that was outside. On the way, the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are heat pumps and solar panels realistic alternatives? The Met Office has issued weather warnings as temperatures in the UK could drop as low as 12 degrees. And with the country facing extreme weather conditions this year, people are struggling to afford to heat their homes this winter during the cost of living crisis. But are the heat pumps and the solar panels that they're trying to sell us realistic alternatives? We'll talk about that after this.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Coming up to 23 minutes after 5 o'clock, this is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And it's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are heat pumps and solar panels realistic alternatives? I mean, you've seen the weather. I mean, it's freezing. The Met Office has issued weather warnings as temperatures in the UK could drop as low as 12 degrees. And with the country facing extreme weather conditions this year, people are struggling to afford to heat their homes during this cost of living crisis, which is pushing some families into make the choice between heating or eating. But could heat pumps and solar panels actually be realistic? Could they cope? The average solar panel system for a 3-bedroom house costs over £5,000. And whilst installing a heat pump costs on average £12,000, that's quite a hefty price tag. So we asked the public how they feel and how they are adapting to the cold earlier today.
I think being careful. I mean, it's not good when the house gets cold, so it's making sure doors to rooms that aren't used are shut and really trying to keep 1 or 2 rooms cosy and not worrying so much about the rest and, you know, putting on a sweater if it gets chilly.
Yeah, I quite like being cold, so I'm quite relieved to finally have this cold snap.
I mean, the heating prices are insane, so you kind of try and minimise that as much as you can.
So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are heat pumps and solar panels realistic alternatives? I'm joined now by physicist and engineer Brian Catt, and also the former lead Labour Minister Dennis McShane, and also senior meteorologist Jim Dale. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Brian Catt. Talk to me about this. Solar panels, heat pumps, this appears to be what they're telling us to use. Is it realistic? Would they be able to cope with this current weather?
Well, first of all, solar panels are not going to do any heating for you, they're only going to generate electricity. When you need most electricity is in dark, cold times of year, which is when solar panels don't work. So to use solar panels in order to, in any context of staying warm or working in the winter, their annual total duty cycle is about 10%. So they're just pointless in the winter. At the moment, there's no solar, obviously, because it's dark and cold, and there's no wind either. So, in fact, we're relying on gas and nuclear. Surprise.
So what about heat pumps, then?
Heat pumps.
They're pushing us to heat pumps. Well, is that something?
They are pushing us to something which doesn't actually work for most people. If you are rich and you can have a new build and you can put underfloor water heating in, which will work with the heat pumps, then that's OK. If you're in a traditional house, then it's not.
But are they effective in these sort of weather conditions? Would they do a good job?
Well, the reason it's not a good idea is because, no, they aren't, especially if they're air sourced. If you live in a flat and you don't have a garden, i.e. you're not wealthy, A, it's going to cost you a lot of money, B, how is it going to work? It's going to be an air-sourced heat pump which can't really get the water much above 40 degrees, and you're going to have to take out your existing heating system and put in an underfloor water system in order to make your house warm at all.
Well, let me ask Jim Dale then, because what is causing this current sort of bad weather at the moment? Is it what we would expect for this time of year?
Yeah, we've got some, if you care to step out, you've got some in London at the moment falling on you, so quite unusual. So, but that's the first dose for London. What's causing it is it's air from the poles. We got high pressure over Greenland, very high pressure, and an intense high pressure over Russia. Between that, you've got Scandinavia. That's where the low pressure was and is, and it's elongated itself towards us, being squozed down as the Arctic, I say the Arctic parts of the Arctic, 4, 5, 6 degrees warmer than they should be. It's kind of at the vortex going wrong, so you get the cold pool coming down. It always hits somewhere. Over the last week or so, it's come down through Norway into ourselves. That's the cause, and you're right in your earlier comments. It doesn't look as if it's going to go anywhere very quickly. Certainly not for a week anyway.
And has it got anything to do with global warming? Because we hear about all of this going on, which is why we're heading towards these heat pumps and things. Is this part of it? Is that the view?
Yeah, as a one-off event, you've got to say no. I'm not suggesting for 1 second that just because we go into a cold spell, and this isn't anywhere near records that have been established in the past. So take yourself back to 2010-11. Temperatures were much colder than we're seeing at this moment in time. Record temperatures 27.2 long time ago. So no, occasionally we do get this, but what you've got to do with all of this is you've got to join the dots. You can't just look as an island, as a kind of individual country and say, yes or no to climate change, in this case, in such a short period. So climatologists, meteorologists will look at this after the event and decide what went on by looking at more than just the UK, more than just Western Europe, seeing what was happening in the Arctic at the time, how the influence of the oceans around us, the sea temperatures at the moment are
so with all of that,
so higher than they should be. So all of that together, you see where I'm going.
So there's a lot to look at. So in your view, though, do you think that the CO2 is the issue, and that the heading move towards this heat pumps and all these sources is definitely the move forward?
For me, it's definitely the move forward. It's an evolution, not a revolution. I take Brian's points about the difficulties because they do exist, and it is our infrastructure, if you like, the way our housing is and has been established over the last 30 odd years. I would say before you even get into any of this, insulation is probably the number one area that we should be aiming for, so that we don't lose the heat that we've got in these houses. And that's where the government and private industry should be focusing before we get into the solar. But the solar, the heat pumps, they're part of an overall equation of renewables, the green energies, if you like. Wind power goes with that, tidal power and other aspects. So it doesn't solve all crimes, if that makes sense, but it's certainly the direction of travel that we need to go in. It's a bit like taking the square wheel that once existed and making it round, and it works better, and that's probably what we've got to do with heat pumps and solar.
Dennis, you're smiling. Can people really afford this, though? I mean, and it doesn't sound like it's very effective. Dennis?
Sorry, for me,
yeah, Dennis,
I'm so sorry. So still with Jim. No, I was absolutely fascinated by it, because I can remember delivering papers, a paperboy round on the North Circular Road, and it was completely frozen over for sort of about a week, and I went up and down on my sledge. I also remember sleeping there and waking up with icicles in my nose.
Can people afford this, Dennis?
No, we absolutely can't afford what some private sector businesses want to do, which is to get us to install heat pumps at £12,000 a shot. We have to dig up your garden. You can't do it for a flat. What we can afford to do is the same as a cold country I worked in for many years, Switzerland. You have proper central heating. You have proper home insulation. It's an obligation on every builder. And here we still have so many ramshackle builders. The worst example, of course, is the Grenfell fire. But again and again, you go in now to properties apartment blocks only built 10, 15 years ago, and they're flaking at the edges. They're cracking, aren't they?
But with all of that, though, but realistically, though, because from what I'm hearing, so listening to what Brian is saying, that this is actually not very effective and it's going to be difficult for us to do that, and a lot of the sources that we're using don't specifically work that well in the cold environment. Is it actually the right direction for us to be going? Genuinely, I mean, Brian.
Right. There's all sorts of things. It is an evolution. Eventually we will run out, and the point really here is eventually we will start to run out of gas, which means it will get too expensive, scarce. And
we need an alternative.
We've got a lot of that. So we will eventually need an alternative, by which time we should have built enough nuclear energy to provide cheap, reliable electrical energy to power heat pumps. But also we've got to change the housing stock. You can't insulate sensibly and safely an old-fashioned house. Like mine's, I thought, quite modern when I bought it in the 1950s, but those houses are designed to breathe, and water vapour is supposed to pass through the walls, through the cavity walls and outside. If you try locking them up with foam coating like they have in Germany, they get damp very quickly. You then need to put something in the roof to force air to circulate through. It's horribly expensive. The houses are not designed to work with heat pumps, so you'd have to turn over the housing stock. Now, just think seriously how old most houses are in the UK. That's a lot of building to do. This isn't this is probably a century thing rather than even a multi-decadal thing. If that's
do we have to do this then? I mean, do we have to do
eventually? But nobody should be forced to do it. That's the other point. And people should not be forced to try to do what the government wants them to do because it has some ideology about reducing carbon dioxide emissions or electrification is wonderful, which is not the case. It's only good when you don't have an alternative, which is your point at the start. We do have an alternative. It's called gas.
Jim, what do you think, though? The coal mine, obviously, they're going to be used for coking, but ultimately, do you think that we should potentially start using the rest of our coal before we get into this? Because we've got a lot of things to do. We're going to have to change the housing stock. I mean, even you would acknowledge that's...
We need to get away from that. This is like stepping back to prehistoric times almost. Not quite, but you see where, it's not the direction of travel. Absolutely not. The focus has to be renewables in whatever guise they come in. And look, I think we're all in agreement on this panel about the difficulties in terms of the housing stock and that side of things. But that doesn't mean you face backwards and because that's not the way you do things. If you look at other countries and what they do, so solar panels, for example, China, USA, India are the leaders. As far as heat pumps are concerned, it tends to be the Scandinavian countries. Norway, Sweden, Finland are all leading the pack. And you can look at places like Costa Rica. You wouldn't think they're sort of top of the economic pile, but they're around about 99% renewables. They don't use gas and oil. It's gone. So I think it's the direction. It's how you face, and that's what the problem for the government is. Which way does it want to face? And I think half of it wants to face one way, half of it wants to face the other.
Yeah.
And really,
we need to work that out.
We're standing still.
Well, listen, I've got to thank you all because we are running out of time. Thank you so much to Brian Catt, also former Labour Minister Dennis McShane, and also senior meteorologist Jim Dale. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are heat pumps and solar panels realistic alternatives? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christian Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. First, though, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Some breaking news this hour. A number of people are believed to be in a critical condition after being pulled from a lake in Solihull. West Midlands Police described the incident as serious, saying emergency services are at Babs Mill Park in Kingshurst. It's not yet clear how those involved ended up in the water in freezing conditions. We'll have more on this story as we get it. Jersey authorities say the recovery operation after yesterday's explosion will take weeks, not days. At least 3 people were killed when a blast ripped through a block of flats in St Helier. No survivors have been found. 12 people are still thought to be missing. The man accused of making the bomb that caused the Lockerbie disaster is now in US custody. 270 people were killed when a device was detonated on Pan Am Flight 103 in December 1988. The Justice Department says Libyan Abu Aghila Massoud, who's believed to be the third conspirator of the terrorist attack, will make an initial appearance in a federal court in Washington. The Nurses' Union has offered to press pause on strike action if the government agrees to hold talks on pay. The Royal College of Nursing has accused the Health Secretary of failing to negotiate properly, and thousands of members are now planning to walk out on the 15th and 20th of December. Writing in The Sun, Steve Barclay warned the action will cause significant risk to patients and added the door remains open for further talks. The cold snap, which has been causing travel disruption, is expected to continue throughout the week. Snow and ice has hit large swaths of the UK, and the Met Office says overnight frost is expected until at least next Friday. A yellow alert for snow and ice is still in place for Scotland, as well as southwestern England, and an ice and fog warning has now come into effect in Northern Ireland. TV, online and DAB+ radio. Stay with us. Nana's back in a moment.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. Don't forget to download the GB News app, or why not follow us live on YouTube. You can stream the shows. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, we're going to move now to some live pictures now of NASA's Orion spacecraft crashing back to Earth after its 25-day trip around the moon. There it is. Look, we thought we'd give you this is live. This is all happening now. So we thought, how far is it? How much further has it got to go? Yes.
So 3 parachutes for the benefit of the radio listeners. 3 parachutes.
That's a good point there. Thank you.
3 parachutes just gently allowing this thing to descend.
I haven't even introduced you, so they don't even know who you are. So for the benefit of the radio listeners, why don't you introduce yourself, my friend?
At least they know what we're looking
smart
at.
face.
3 lovely red and white stripy parachutes.
We'll leave you to it.
Dropping a little parcel to the ground.
Yeah. It's all very
in
entertaining.
the Pacific Ocean.
Is it landing in the ocean?
Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so the sort of uncrewed capsule, which was designed to carry astronauts, has travelled more than 1.4 million miles.
Hey,
there you go. This is it splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. If it's successful, of course, the craft will take humans around the moon in 2024. So there you go. The exercise is part of NASA's Artemis programme, a quest to take people back to the moon later this decade. Fittingly, today marks exactly 50 years since this feat was last achieved by the crew of Apollo 17. So there you go. Did you see that? That was live. That happened now. Right, though, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are heat pumps and solar panels realistic alternatives? The Met Office has said that temperatures could drop to lows of minus 12 degrees, with the UK facing extreme weather conditions. People are struggling to afford to heat their homes during this winter cost of living crisis. That's pushing some families to make the choice between heating or eating. And with greener alternatives costing us a fortune, are heat pumps and solar panels really the way forward? So what do you think? For our Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking you exactly that question. Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by the fabulous Danny Kelly. They didn't say your name, so it's whatever came to mind.
An adjective.
And the amazing Christine Hamilton. Let's start with the fabulous Danny Kelly.
Oh, what a bus she's just thrown me under.
Go on, then.
Well, look, she has. Oh, you're wicked.
Oh, it's good.
Personally, I think that, you know, if you've got if you live in a listed house, a listed building. In fact, Christine, you live in a building that's got
I do, yes.
listed
It's
protection.
a medieval house, and we can't do anything without permission. We would not be allowed to have a heat pump.
You wouldn't allow, the council wouldn't allow you, like, a fridge freezer or the equivalent size poking out of the first floor window, would it?
Yes.
So you are going to freeze to death.
So what's your point?
No, I have a very simple solution.
Really are going for it, aren't you?
We have a lot of drafty windows which don't, and in the winter they're. To a certain extent, you need draft. That's one of the troubles with some modern houses. They don't have enough air section.
This is fascinating. You carry on for the rest of it.
I stick kitchen paper around the worst cracks and pull it out again in the spring. But no, we need some alternative. Heat pumps are vastly expensive. They're for the very few who can afford it, despite the fact the government's going to give a grant of £5,000. For most people, they're completely off the spectrum, your personal financial spectrum. And also, they are going to be, before you begin to get any money back, anything back on your investment of the heat pump, they're going to be obsolete. So people who are doing it now, frankly, are crazy. It's the second mouse that gets the cheese. You need to wait for the better heat pumps. But we've got to do something. I mean, for example, these are the figures for today, OK? Wind power, 2% of our needs. Solar, 4% of our needs. Nuclear, 15%, coal, 3%, gas, 56%. And then there's another very interesting one called interconnectors. We got 15% of our energy needs from interconnectors. That means countries like France, Ireland, Norway, who have surplus, but they can decide to shut that off just at a moment.
It's a bit like the pandemic. If they
their
need it,
people need it, they need it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got to do something, but I really don't think heat pumps are the answer yet. We need to go on exploring. We need to build more nuclear reactors, small modular nuclear reactors that can be built quickly, don't cost a lot of money, they can be dropped in as modules, and away we go.
Danny, you're on that then. Christine's been...
I'm a big fan of nuclear power, Christine.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a massive fan of nuclear power. In fact, since the nuclear power plant in... I always have to test myself mentally before I say it. It's Fukushima.
Yes, careful.
Okay?
Yes, you've got it right.
Always got to go that little bit extra to make sure that I say it right. France, I believe, they ditched a lot of their nuclear power plants. And one thing that we've learned since the invasion of Ukraine in February this year is the fact that we need alternatives.
We do.
We need safe alternatives. And unfortunately, people have pandered to a group of people who don't want us to use nuclear power, and they will always say, look what's happened in Chernobyl, look what's happened in Fukushima, and then politicians, they just crumble under the pressure of...
No, but I think there is a point. You have to be careful with these nuclear reactors, because when it does go wrong, it goes dramatically wrong, and it causes catastrophic, events. So we do have to be very mindful of nuclear. It is not this one thing that fits all, and it's not the one thing that is the big solution, because potentially you have the opportunity for terrorism with something like that as well. So we have to be realistic when we're choosing these power sources. And also, nuclear isn't without its own issues, because, of course, you need uranium, and uranium is mined in places like Niger, in West Africa and other parts of the world. And where those uranium mines are, the environment for those people is devastating. So we have to be careful.
No, we need to widen our base. So I suppose, in a way, you might say heat pumps are part of that. We need to do more gas exploration, because our gas supplies are running out rapidly, and we haven't put enough money into more gas fields. We should be doing that. But I mean, heat pumps, in a way, they're a new technology. So, in X years down the line, decades, they'll probably be absolutely brilliant. But they're not available for lots. You live in a block of flats, you don't have any ground, so you can't have a ground heat pump. You can only have an air heat pump, which has to be tacked onto the side of your flat, which is pretty unattractive.
Unsightly. We'll work it out, because it's a bit like...
We'll work it out.
It's a bit like satellite dishes. They were ghastly, but now nobody needs them.
But it's for the very rich. It really is at the moment.
Yeah. Well, let's see what our viewers think, because this show is nothing without them. Let's welcome our great British voices on their opportunity to tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing today. I've got 4. Right, let's start with... only 3. Who's left me? It's not Brian Dugan. He's there in the middle. Brian Dugan in Solihull. You can start us off.
Hi, Nana. How are you?
Good, thank you. Go on then, Brian.
Well, I do agree. We do need to start weaning ourselves off what we're reliant upon at the moment. I'm not so sure that they are economically viable right now. Brian Carr also earlier made the very valid point in terms of the solar panels. At the time that we might want them most, they're not really going to work at this time of year in this country, in this climate. I do have friends, Nana, who they did cut their energy bills by solar panels. They doubled the required insulation. They had an air source heat pump with zoned underfloor heating, and I think it was mechanical ventilation, and they halved their energy bill. So they would be great advocates, but I'm a little sceptical that we can move across right now. I don't think it's economical for everybody.
No, thank you for that, Brian. Let's go to Miranda Richardson. You know the Miranda Richardson, the one in Northamptonshire. Miranda, what's your view?
Hi, Nana.
Hi.
I think one of the other things we're missing is actually that at the moment, the current designs that are out there don't have a very long shelf life, about 15 years. So, you might go through a lot of expense of installing them to not actually have them very long. And it's a little bit like Christine says, the second mouse gets the cheese, just waiting for that next better, more reliable bit to come. I think we need we need to start educating people as to how to insulate properly, and not just, wall insulation and cavity insulation and things like that. But, my pub's grade 2 listed, very cold upstairs, sash windows. What we've done is we've put some of the cellophane to the windows, to warm it up for now, to stop the draft. Yeah. You have curtains. What happens to curtains?
I'm going to get a curtain for my
blinds
front
now, blinds and things like that, and all these modern things.
They
don't keep the heat in. They keep it warm.
Well, Miranda, thank you for that. Let's go to Dr. Seshni. Seshni, you're there in Milton Keynes. Your view, very briefly. You've got 30 seconds.
Good evening, Nana. Yes, I agree with most of the panel. I agree that it's not a viable and effective options to have solar panels as well as heat pumps. It's expensive, it's going to be costly, and the majority of people are not going to be able to afford it. It'll only provide heat and air and solar, only provide 11% of electricity.
It's not enough, is it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Seshni. Let's go to Lee in... where are you, Lee? You're in Luton.
I'm in Bedford, Nana.
Okay, cool.
Right,
Nice.
so with these house heat pumps, they don't actually provide a lot of heat for central heating. They keep it to around about 16, 17, I believe. Now, you already know, Nana, what I've been through over this last year, where I've had treatment for cancer, and as part of that treatment, it's altered my metabolism, which means I feel the cold a lot more. So if I had these heat pumps, I'm just going to be sat there freezing and having to wear loads of coats on anyhow. So that's on a personal level. So I'd rather stick with my gas, which gives me a nice, toasty, warm house,
Yeah.
And I don't need to worry about the cold for my recovery.
It's probably cheaper as well, Lee. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Lee in Bedford, Miranda in Northamptonshire, Brian in Solihull, and Seshney in Milton Keynes. Right, well, let's quickly turn our attention to the World Cup. England, they lost, didn't they, the quarter-final 2-1 yesterday against France. To talk all things football, I'm joined by GBNews reporter Paul Hawkins, who's there in Qatar for us now. I've got a bit of Qatar. Paul, what's it like? Talk to me. What's going on? What's the vibe?
Yeah, the vibe's good, yeah. It's about 8:30 in the evening here in the souk, and it's really, really, really busy, but very few England fans. A lot of them have left for Dubai, flown back to the UK. Indeed, the England team itself has already flown back to the UK. Jude Bellingham, talking to the press, was briefly saying to the press just before the England coach left the Al Wakra Hotel, saying, "Stick with us." That's his message to England fans following their exit to France last night. Harry Kane also tweeting earlier, by the way, that he was absolutely gutted, and it came down to a small detail, that penalty, which he which he takes responsibility for, and he says England will be stronger and better for it in future when they get to the European Championships, if they qualify, of course, in 2 years' time. This is how England fans have been reacting to last night's exit from the World Cup.
At the end of the day, we've been knocked out of a major tournament and probably won. Well, I think we'll look back on it. If we would have beat France, we would have went on to win it. But it's game last night is. Just it could have went either way. Honestly, the game could have went either way. The whole thing, it was nip and tug between, but you got to take your chances, and I don't think we did that well enough. France were clinical, and now we're going home a week early, unfortunately.
But you know, that's England. We've been here before. We know what to expect. So we've had 3 great weeks out here. Spent it with some great friends. We've had some marvellous weather, some good food, and some wonderful hospitality. And I think we'll look back at the photos and the videos and the media appearances and realise we've had a great time, you know. So it's not all negative this morning.
Whether he stays or whether he goes, I'm a bit ambivalent. If he stays, good. If he decides to call it a day, it's okay. It is what it is. He might feel that now that we've been eliminated at the quarter-final, it's a bit of a step back from the previous, but you know, in terms of people going about progression, we got semi-final, then we got to the final of the Euros, and I think people thought the natural progression here would be to win it, and I think there will be regret this morning.
So England play Italy next March. That's the start of the European Championship qualifying campaign. Will Gareth Southgate be manager then? He's remained tight-lipped on his future. As for the World Cup, the 2 semi-finals coming up on Wednesday. We've got Croatia against Argentina and then Morocco against France. Morocco, the first African team to qualify for the semi-finals of the World Cup. They're 2 matches away from winning the World Cup, and you don't have to be a football expert to realise what a complete shock that would be. In political terms, it would be like the Lib Dems winning the general election.
Well, that's never going to happen, is it? Thank you very much, Paul Hawkins. Lovely to talk to you. I don't even know they still exist. They're still Liberal Democrats there. Right now, though, it's time for Supplement Sunday. This is the part of the show where my panel discuss some of the stories that caught their eye. Let's start with Christine. Christine, you got something about the hairy bikers?
Well, yes, I was delighted to see, I didn't see it on the television, but the hairy biker Dave Myers is back on television. He's had a year of terrible cancer. He's had treatment. He's lost all his hair, which for a hairy biker is the ultimate nightmare. So he's come back. He's looking rather hairless. And I just thought it was a heartwarming story because he said here, I can't pretend otherwise. There were times when I didn't think I'd be here for Christmas. And he is here for Christmas. Good. Welcome back, Dave.
Welcome back. Let's go to our...
warm story.
Now just known as a biker.
Yeah. Now just a biker.
Known as a biker. Well, let's go to our non-hairy Danny.
Marlene Headley.
Marlene Headley.
Of course.
Oh, no, we know who she is.
And Gozy. That's it, Marlene. Basically, if you believe that she was troublemaking and confrontational and almost race-baiting, if that's your view, well, it's backfired on her because, unfortunately, because of the online abuse she's received from her opponents,
that's what she said.
They've now had to actually cease the assistance. So it's backfired on her somewhat. Or, if you look at it the other way round, her highlighting racism, bigots have forced her to close down temporarily her charity. There are 2 ways to look at it.
Hang on a minute. Highlighting racism, that makes the automatic assumption that it was racist.
Nobody's forced her to do anything.
I agree with you.
Nobody's forced anyone to do anything. At the end of the day, you know, if you bring things to the forefront, especially in the mainstream media like that, then you yourself will be also investigating.
Of course.
That's how it goes.
Very naive.
Well, listen, shall I do my one then? Because my one, obviously, this is all about Harry and Meghan.
Oh,
I love all that. Yes, the final 3 episodes of the infamous Harry and Meghan documentary will cover the extent of Megxit. I'm looking forward to that. There's also a story in the Metro about Harry and Meghan being told to stay away from King Charles' coronation.
Yes.
So have Harry and Meghan completely burnt their bridges with the royal family? Christine, do you think they should stay away?
I'm afraid I do. I think they've brought this upon themselves, 100%.
Danny,
they've burnt their bridges.
They've burnt their bridges.
They've torched that bridge.
They've torched that bridge.
It would be terrible for them to be sitting in the congregation at the coronation. Awful.
We can't have them there. Listen, on today's show, we've been asking, do you believe Labour will crack down on trade unions? According to our Twitter poll, 5% of you say yes and 95% of you don't believe a word. Well, listen, thank you so much to my panel, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly for joining me today.
Thank you very much indeed.
A huge thank you to you for your company. I'll be back next Saturday at 4. I'll leave you now with the weather. Enjoy your week.
And looking ahead to this evening's weather, the UK is looking cold with freezing fog and a risk of wintry showers in places. Let's take a look at the details. Wintry showers continuing at northern coast this evening, some possible snow showers over high ground, clearer skies further west, but patchy freezing fog in the east and a widespread frost. A band of wintry showers in the southeast, bringing some snow inland later. Elsewhere, a widespread frost and patchy freezing fog once again. Dry with mostly clear skies this evening in South Wales, a few wintry showers possible at western coasts, light winds and a widespread frost expected there too. Staying mostly dry across the Midlands later, although a few wintry showers are possible in the south. Clearer skies further north, a widespread frost again, patchy mist and freezing fog in the evening. Remaining dry across much of northern England, although a few isolated wintry showers are possible. Clearer at times, temperatures below freezing, patchy mist and freezing fog once again. And a cold evening in Scotland with a continued risk of sleet and snow. Clearer skies further south, a widespread frost. Temperatures dropping quickly tonight. And staying dry for much of Northern Ireland this evening. Wintry showers continuing to affect northern and eastern coasts. Clearer skies further west. And a mostly dry night for the entire UK. Wintry showers confined to the coast, widespread frost and freezing fog by Monday morning. And that's how today's very cold weather is shaping up for you today.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest